Okay, I want you to picture this. It's 1831. The great philosopher George Hegel, a guy who basically mapped out all of reality, puts his pen to paper one last time. For almost 200 years, everyone thought that final manuscript was lost to history. But what if I told you a document has just come to light? A radical, personal, final testament from Hegel, grappling with a question that goes beyond philosophy itself. What happens after you've found the truth? So by 1831, Hegel had done something just mind-boggling. He built his system, this incredible philosophical architecture that claimed to explain the rational structure of, well, everything. History, nature, human consciousness, the whole shebang. It was all wrapped up in a perfect closed circle of thought. But in that quiet after you've supposedly figured it all out, a new, pretty unsettling question started creeping in. And this is it. Just 4 words found right at the beginning of this lost manuscript. What now breathes? After the giant intellectual machine of the system has explained away all of existence, what about the simple, living, breathing reality that just keeps going? This is the central mystery that drives this entire final work. And that leads us right to the manuscript's first big, counterintuitive idea. Finishing philosophy wasn't the end of the road. No, it was actually the starting line for a brand new and way more personal kind of journey. So, real quick, what is the Hegelian system? Well, the core idea is that all of reality is one single logical story. It's like the universe itself is a kind of consciousness, and over the long, messy course of human history, it's finally figured itself out. You've probably heard the metaphor of a snake eating its own tail. It's this perfect, self-contained loop. But here's the problem. A perfect loop feels done. The story's over. There's nothing left to say. Or is there? Well, in this last manuscript, Hegel says, hold on. He writes that his system was never meant to be a mausoleum, a beautiful polished tomb for a dead idea. The whole point wasn't just to have the truth locked in a box. The point was to figure out how to live inside that truth. How does life actually feel, moment to moment, after its ultimate logic has been laid bare? And this brings us to the manuscript's most shocking move. To answer that question, what now breathes, Hegel pivots. He turns away from the giant, sweeping abstractions of history and logic, and he turns toward the most immediate, concrete thing any of us have, the human body.
So you see, the whole problem changes. It stops being this big academic puzzle. It becomes a deeply existential question. If you are a normal, finite, mortal person, but you've somehow grasped the infinite, eternal structure of all reality, how in the world do you just go about your day? How do you make coffee? How do you talk to your friends with that knowledge in your head?
And here's his new, incredible concept for this, the aperture. The manuscript argues that once you understand the system, you're transformed. You're not just a little separate me fighting against a big, scary world anymore. Instead, you become a unique, finite opening, like the aperture of a camera, through which the entire cosmic process, what Hegel famously calls spirit, gets to live and breathe and experience itself. This makes the body absolutely central to everything. It's not just some biological machine we carry our brains around in. In this view, the body is spirit's intimate alien. Think about that. It's the tangible, physical way the universe shows up right here, right now. It's the closest thing to us, and yet it's also the strangest. It's our intimate alien. Now, to make this idea really concrete and not just float away into abstraction, the manuscript zooms in, like way in, on the most basic, most overlooked human activity there is, just breathing. Hegel seems to argue this is where the deepest truth has been hiding in plain sight the whole time. I mean, think about it. He suggests that we've been looking for truth in these giant, complicated books and massive historical events when the fundamental rhythm of reality itself has been happening inside our own chests completely unnoticed, with every single breath we take. So the manuscript actually breaks down the simple rhythm of breathing, and it shows how it's a perfect mirror of Hegel's famous dialectic. When you inhale, you're literally taking in the world, making something other than you a part of yourself. And when you exhale, you're giving yourself back to the world, making yourself a part of the other. It's this constant, living pulse, a back and forth between taking in and giving out. And the conclusion here is, honestly, it's wild. It means that logic isn't just some abstract game you play in your head. It's a living, rhythmic, breathing process. Thinking, the manuscript claims, is just a more complicated, more refined version of breathing. They are the exact same activity, just showing up at different levels. Okay, so if we are all these breathing apertures, what does that mean for how we relate to each other? Well, the manuscript zooms back out from the individual and applies this whole breathing insight to our relationships, to that space between people. You know, the air we breathe isn't private property. It's shared. The breath you just let out might literally become a part of the person next to you. On a very real, physical level, we're not isolated islands. We are all participants in one single planetary respiration, constantly exchanging the world with one another. And this is how a true we can emerge. First, there's the I, a single breathing aperture. Then I encounter thou, or you, another aperture, totally unique and other than me. But when we actually face each other, the manuscript says, we create a special space, a between, where the universal spirit can finally see and recognize itself from two different points of view at the same time. And this gives us this incredible new definition of love. It's not just a fuzzy feeling or an emotion. Philosophically speaking, love is that moment when the boundary between I and you becomes transparent. It is the direct, felt experience of spirit recognizing its own oneness right through two separate bodies. It's a profound philosophical event. So what's the big takeaway here? How does any of this actually change our lives? Well, the final section of the manuscript brings all these amazing threads together into a really powerful vision for how to live. The text calls it absolute living, but don't let the name fool you. It's not about achieving some mystical, enlightened state or floating off the ground. It's actually the complete opposite. It's about fully, deeply inhabiting your ordinary everyday life. You know, making breakfast, walking down the street, talking with a friend, but doing it with this new awareness of the incredible truth humming just beneath the surface. And it lays out a practice in 4 steps. First, really inhabit your breath. Feel it as the rhythm of reality. Second, truly recognize the other. See every person you meet not as a stranger, but as a fellow aperture. Third, find meaning in negativity. See pain or struggle not just as bad things, but as spirit bumping up against its own limits. And finally, put it all together to see the infinite shining right through the most ordinary, boring moments of your life. And now for the final reveal. The source for all of this lost manuscript we've been exploring, well, it's not actually real. The afterword reveals that it's a modern work of fiction, a philosophical experiment. It was written to ask, if Hegel had kept writing, where might his thoughts have taken him? So we haven't been analyzing a historical document. For the last few minutes, we've actually been participating in a philosophical creation together. The book's epilogue addresses you, the reader, directly. It says the system, whether it's Hegel's or this fictional version, was never meant to be a cage of final answers. It was always meant to be a key. So the question it leaves us with isn't about what Hegel thought. It's a question for us, right here, right now. What will you unlock?